Okay. Good morning. I wanted to have us cover a couple topics this morning. Can you see my screen, Chris?
Can.
Okay. A few of the things that I sort of wanted to cover. One, it deals with federal promotions and raises. The reason I want to bring that up is a lot of people have misconceptions. Even people in the federal government have misconceptions about how promotions and raises go. The important thing to remember is it's all written down already. So, you know, if you figure out how to work that system best, it will work best for you. And then we're going to do a interview tips, starting with a horror story, what actually occurred in an interview that I was part of that I think is worth everyone learning about. And then if time permits afterwards, we're going to talk about device and operating system updates because of the latest Chromium update that was announced. So any questions from this point, Chris? Anything?
No questions for me. I see Jari has joined.
Okay. Oh, good morning. Uh-oh. She's not moving.
Yeah.
And until you hear the ding, she hasn't joined audio. But okay, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
She may be able to see us, but we can't hear her, and she probably can't hear us.
Gotcha.
So let's talk about federal promotions and raises. I think the first thing to discuss is raises, and the federal OPM personnel system operates based on time in grade. That's the main reason people get raises. If you are in a federal position, let's say a GS-2210 Step 1, I don't even know if such a position exists, but if you're in a Step 1 position and you get a successful performance review, which means that you have performed at a satisfactory level within that position for 12 months from the date of your hire, you are promoted, it's called a promotion, but it's really a raise, to GS-2210 Step 2. And the first few, I think 1 through 3, are each year. So in the first 2 years, you can go from a Step 1 to a Step 3. And then after that, it's every 2 or 3 years, and then it's every 5 years or whatever. Good morning, Johnny.
And that was actually Farsna.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Oh, Farsane, how are you?
Yes, I'm perfect. I'm perfect. Sorry that I'm a couple of minutes late, but I made it.
Uh-huh. Very good. So we're talking about promotions and raises in federal positions. And the reason I'm talking about that is the main group that I am trying to mentor here are people who are looking for federal cybersecurity jobs. Pretty much everything that we teach and mentor here can be used for either federal or the industry, but I'm trying to help encourage people to get federal jobs because I see periods of time in our not too distant future when there are going to be more vacancies than there are going to be people, and that means our federal government agencies are going to be operating at risk. And I don't like that. So I actually corresponded with one of our cybersecurity directors at my position in my organization, and she highly encouraged me to continue doing this. She said, absolutely, we need more people. And she said, we need more qualified people. So it's important enough that she encourages me to do this, so I'm trying to show everybody about it. So anyway, I was talking about the step system.
Good morning.
Good morning, Doug. If you go into opm.gov and take a
Good
look
morning,
at,
everyone.
if you go into opm.gov and take a look at the pay rates, they actually publish pay schedules for the various groups. And a lot of people may not realize this, but a GS-12, let's say step 8 in cybersecurity gets in the same geographic location, gets paid exactly the same as a GS-12 step 8 pool maintenance person. The pay ratings are independent of the specialty in which you're operating. So whether you are in cybersecurity, physical security, administration, management, it doesn't matter. Those pay rates are the same. So if somebody is, for example, a GS-12, step 5, in, let's say, the Department of the Interior Cybersecurity Super Division, and somebody is a GS-12 step 5 in, let's say, Department of GSA, doing paperwork, they get paid exactly the same amount. Okay, so that's important to remember. So, you know, and I'll say one of the misconceptions out there when you look in movies and all this sort of stuff, you see these people that show up to their homes. You know, I saw this one on Amazon Prime recently about, it was called No Remorse, and there was this Navy E8 Senior Chief John Kelly, I think was his name. And he showed up at his house, and it was this 2-story with all sorts of glass, and, you know, it was a mansion. It was literally a mansion. The false perception is that if you do special things, you get special pay. That is not the case. He was getting paid the same amount as any other E8 in the military, and therefore he couldn't afford a place like that. He really couldn't. So, you know, if you look in the media and movies and that sort of thing, they romanticize it. They really do. So just be aware of that. You know, this Navy enlisted guy was living, you know, better than a 2-star general would, because that's how they wanted to portray him. So promotions, again, raises occur mostly as the result of time in service. In other words, your number of years at that same position and specialty. So if you're a GS-2210, step 1, after a year of successful performance, you'll be a step 2. 2 years, you'll be a step 3. I think it's 4 years, you'll be a step 4, etc., etc., etc. So it's based on time in grade. So the important thing to do is to, you know, get into a position and stay there, or get a better position. And there is I would say it's a standard approach toward promotion. I haven't seen this written, but I've been the recipient of it numerous times through numerous agencies. But if you move from one position to a higher grade position, let's say you are a GS-11 at one position, and you apply for and interview for and are selected for a GS-12 position somewhere else. It could literally be next door to where you're sitting now. But when you do that, they do offer you the equivalent of a 2-step raise. In other words, if you're a step 5, let's say GS-11 step 5, when you get through your GS-12 selection and show up there, it will be the equivalent or more to a 2-step promotion at that GS-11 rate. So it'll be at or above a GS-11 step 7. Does everybody catch that? Everybody understand that? So it's a two-step increase if you go from like an 11 to a 12, or a 7 to an 8. If you go from a 7 to a 9, I'm not sure about that one. Typically, I'm not sure about that one.
Okay, so Scotty, is this for basically for every type of
federal job
that you get, or is just for this is mostly for the industry of cybersecurity industry?
No, this is the federal employment system.
Okay.
So it's everything. And like I was saying, you know, if you're a GS8 pool maintenance guy, you get paid the same as a GS8 cybersecurity analyst.
Mm-hmm.
Basically speaking. Then there are, in the federal government, there are what are called locality rate adjustments. And they basically say, here's what's called, and you've heard this before, base pay. So the OPM tables have base pay rates. But then based on cost of living adjustments in other areas of the nation, many locations have a higher cost of living, so they get an additional certain percentage in the form of a locality pay adjustment. That is strictly limited to your location for your duty station, and you can't say, well, I commute from, let's say, Kentucky over to Cincinnati, so I should get the Cincinnati pay rate or whatever. You can't really contest that. That is set up geographically, and it is pretty much set in stone. Again, as determined by Congress, not determined by your employer. So let's talk about promotions. And I'm gonna give a horror story here. Oh no, I'll give the horror story later. But there is. I read this a couple years ago, and there's no reason for me to believe that this has changed. But this statement said that they had interviewed millennials and said, what do you believe constitutes the appropriate situation for you to get a promotion and a raise? In other words, what is your perception, your anticipation of what it takes to be, promoted? And in that survey, 40% of millennials said that if I'm in the same job after 4 years, I deserve a promotion. 40% of millennials basically said, if I stick with you, you owe me more money. And in the federal government, that's not the way it works. You'll get your regular step increases, but if you stay, for example, as a GS11, let's say you stay a GS11 for years and years and years and years and years, all you're going to get is those step increases. You're not going to get a raise. Because, and we're going to talk about this, if you notice the top statement here, federal employment is by position. Your position is defined before you arrive. And if you look in the job vacancy announcements, they say GS-2210-7/9 or 7 or 11 or something like that. Those numbers are what that position is defined as. Whether you do a barely acceptable job or whether you save the president at that job, the pay is still the same. Okay? That's another reason why there is a perception that federal employees are lazy. The reason is, if they work hard, and I experienced this when I was in the Pentagon. It literally caused me to leave civil service. I was trying to get into a position. I was a GS-12, and I was trying to get into a GS-13 position, and I spoke directly with the director. And this was a pretty prestigious position. It was the branch chief for the Secretary of Defense IT support team. In other words, we were the top help desk in the Department of Defense. And I wanted the branch chief position there. And the director said, I would love to get you there. However, because of my hiring rules, there are about 20 other people just in our directorate that are ahead of you in terms of time and grade and time in their position. And they, some of them are even supervisory. In other words, they qualify long before you do for the position. And he said, I just can't get you there from here, Scotty. I apologize, but I can't get you there. And I was really dejected, and I walked back to my cubicle. And literally, as I was walking back there, I was looking in at all of these other GS-13s that were ahead of me. In other words, the ones that had to be hired before I was hired. And some of them were even asleep at their desks. And that just got me fed up, and I left civil service. So the important thing to remember is you can be a success, but you have to fit within the rules in the federal hiring and promotion system. The best way to get promoted is to get another position, not to expect to be promoted within your same position. Okay? So even if you do decide to get hired by the federal government and you are at a position you like, keep looking at the federal job vacancies. Keep that, that pathway warm. You may not do anything with it. I still get my job vacancy announcements, and I am extremely happy in the job I have, but I still get the vacancy announcements. So, just in case some, magic position comes flying by, I know it's out there. Okay, so remember that the hiring and employment is based on the position, not on you. If you fit into it, they hire you, but then if you grow within it, the position hasn't changed. So the best thing for you to do is to grow out of it into another position. Any questions?
So even if it's... Oh, sorry, Chris.
You go ahead, Doug. You talk first.
Okay, so thanks. So even if you go like the lateral, doesn't have to be, but it's as far as it's a higher grade, but it's lateral within your same department, that would be the way to go. Like from a 12 to a 13.
Yes.
In the same department, right? The same.
Yes. Yes, and you can apply for a position sitting right next to you. Absolutely. That's how to move fastest within the federal government. Apply for new positions.
Okay.
And here's another thing a lot of people don't recognize. Again, if you are fully successful in performing the roles of your job. Let's say, I'll give an example of me. I was really good at IT, and I was hired into a GS-5 position over at Bolling Air Force Base. The position was actually a secretary position. It was a secretary rating, but they were using me as the LAN administrator. They were using me as a GS-5 secretary position, but I was the LAN administrator. And they couldn't get my position changed over. They needed a LAN administrator, but all they had was this secretary position. So I was literally performing far above that secretary level, obviously, and they couldn't do anything about it there within the organization. But if I had wanted to get promoted, let's say from a GS-5 to a GS-6, even though, and this is important, even though I had been performing far above the level of that GS-5, And eventually, within about a year, I was hired into a GS7 position. The important thing to remember is in the federal government, if you look at any of those job vacancy announcements, they say if you're going to be promoted into this position, you have to have 12 months experience at the next lowest grade. In other words, even if I had been hired as a GS5 and a GS6 immediately became available, they could not hire me into that GS6 position because I had been at the GS5 position less than a year. So I didn't qualify for the GS6 because I was a GS5, even though I was performing at the GS7 level. So remember that. That's important. If you're in the federal government and you get hired into a position, let's say a GS9, stay there 1 year and then start applying for the other positions. If you apply for a position before that year expires, you do not meet the criteria for what's called time in grade. Okay? 1 year. At any position, if you're GS11 and you want to get to a GS12, be a GS11 for 1 year. And remember I said if you're in for 1 year, what do they give you? From a step 1, they make you a step 2. When you get your step 2 notice, start looking for other jobs. You know, if you're interested in climbing the ladder, that's how you do it. Any questions? Any questions before we go to the next one?
I do have a comment, Scotty.
Sure.
Even in the ladder positions, there are still some other background things going on that doesn't automatically guarantee you to go from the next step to the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the evaluation. You have to have a fully successful evaluation, but also your supervisor has to put in the forms or put in the statement saying he is eligible for the next ladder up. So let's say, for example, 11, 12, 13, and you're a 12, and you're seeking the 13. Yes, you can meet the year of the 12 to get to the 13, but you also have to get the fully successful rating or above, and your supervisor has to put in the paperwork for you to get into the 13, and then there has to be a position or a budgetary if you have something in the budget for it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not in the budget for it, they will sit there and say, hey, we love you, Chris. We love you, Chris. We love, and all that. But right now, the budget's not letting us move you from a 12 to a 13 and go from there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But that's,
you
it's rare.
A good point. That's in the same position.
Mm-hmm.
But I will also tell you that if you're in, for example, I caught one of those upward mobility positions. I was hired in as a GS7. A year later, they made me a GS9. A year later, they made me a GS11. Okay, same position, but it was, if you guys remember me describing this on the USA Jobs website, if it says 7/11, that's what it's referring to. You can be hired in at the GS7 level, and then if you continue to perform successfully over the course of time, you'll end up being a GS11. The important thing to remember is that if your supervisor does not recommend you, that the HR department starts hammering your supervisor. In other words, they must demonstrate why you are not being elevated. And they have to pull out things like performance reviews. So if you had a successful performance review, HR is going to go, supervisor.
What's going on? Yeah. But no, I don't want to talk any further about that.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question regarding that.
Sure. Sure.
So what can you do, for example, and this, of course, is related to a situation that I have. When you perform and everybody else sees it, but your supervisor doesn't want to see it, and they just give you regular, that means. what can you do? Because I'm thinking when a hiring supervisor is looking at your resume, they want to see your latest. Most of them want to see your latest review.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that if they see your review and they see a meet, or maybe out of 4, 1 exceed, but you're still at a meet in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they might think, okay, so this guy, he's an average, They might even think they try to help you by giving you one of the standards higher. So what can you do? How could you explain to them that? Because I even have had to submit comments with my review. But of course, those comments don't come from my supervisor; they come from me.
Right.
So it's kind of like boasting.
Right.
So how would you defend something like that? What's your an idea to deal with that in front of a hiring manager?
Right. In the federal civil service system, your manager is entrusted with your evaluations, and there are few options to beat that. Unless, for example, your supervisor says you did not perform acceptably and you can prove that you did. That's different. But to go from a fully successful or meets to a exceeds or an outstanding, those are typically subjective. Sorry to say that, but they are. And you can't say, well, I think I deserve higher. It's you against your supervisor. And very few, I would say, almost none of those types of challenges are going to go anywhere, because it's your word against your supervisor's word. And oh, by the way, by definition, your supervisor is supposed to have more experience than you so that they can evaluate you. And you don't. So it's a losing prospect, in my opinion. If you are stuck in a position like that, the best thing I can recommend is find another position.
Yeah, correct, but to find another position, that's what I'm talking about. How could you explain that to a manager, to a hiring manager, that you did what you could, but you were not.
Oh, you
were
mean
not.
You mean civil service hiring?
Yeah, correct.
Like
when somebody.
You go to interview for a job over at FDA?
Well, anywhere, even within your own agency. But I've noticed that when they post a position, they ask you to send in a copy of your latest review.
They're not allowed to see your reviews.
But I've seen a lot of those that send us a copy of your. I don't know if it's your review itself or maybe the.
No, it's your latest SF51 activity, which shows the most recent HR activity performed on you, such as a timing grade raise or bonus or those sorts of things. But no, they're not allowed to see your performance reviews.
Okay, correct. Maybe I'm sorry, I misspoke. But so couldn't they? I am thinking that they request that for a reason, which might be they want to see if you're an average employee or a succeed.
Yeah, no. I think the main reason, this is just my speculation, I think the main reason they asked for your last SF51 is because up until that point, it's your word as to whether, number one, you're in civil service, number two, what grade you're at, etc. And that SF51 shows all of that. It shows your employment date, your last promotion date, your current grade and series, etc. And that's all part of every SF51 form. That's what they're trying to find. They're trying to verify that you are indeed who you say you are.
Okay. Got it. Okay. I had this feeling, I don't know, I was thinking, well, they want to see probably how you're performing and
no.
about hiring or something like that. Okay,
no.
thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that answered my question. Thank you,
Okay.
Scotty.
All right. Any other before we go on to our interview, my super interview tip? Okay. Let's say you're in an interview, and this is specifically for cybersecurity, but it would apply to most any interview you go into. What do you think is one of the most important things that you are trying to communicate to your prospective hiring manager?
I would say that you're going to be the person who is going to solve their problem. I would think, yeah, even if you don't have, even if you don't have everything that they're asking for, but you still can do about 85, 90%, and the rest would be a matter. I can just, you know, I could probably get in a couple of months. I could get a certification and learn X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to be up to level. But I mean, I'm a lifelong learner, and so on and so on. Something like that. Something that I think to ease their pain, that you are the person, the right fit for that position, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? Your suggestions? What is it that you need to make sure that you are positive the prospective hiring employer knows about you when you leave that interview? Chris, I'm asking you to hold off on this one. I'm asking the mentees to give their ideas.
I could a little something to say.
Say that again?
May I answer that question?
I didn't hear that. Chris, did you?
I'll go get my headset, but you
Okay.
cannot hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Okay. What my prospective employer wants to know, number one, the basic things, if I'm qualified,
Mm-hmm.
I have had a little background in working, if I am worthy of the job that they have, and if I have all the basic elements that they're looking for, from being efficient in my work, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I exactly do not have notes like, you know, I'm just thinking from the top of my head.
Uh-huh. Those are all good things that obviously the prospective hiring manager does want to know. So let me go through and walk you through an interview that I participated in, and let me lay the groundwork for you. There was an individual in a branch here in my department that this person's manager thought that this person had been in the position long enough and should be considered for a higher level post within the branch. And some vacancies were coming up. So this individual was encouraged to apply. This person obviously did qualify for the interviews, got their resume in time to be considered, and was part of the rounds of interviews. And we went through these interviews with, I think it was about 8 different people. And when we got to this person, who, by the way, the manager of the branch wanted this person to have consideration for the position. Okay? in other words, he wasn't saying hire this person, but he did say this person's in the list, and I want this person to get a break, a fair break to determine if this person qualifies. He wasn't trying to push any buttons or anything. But we got to the end of the interview, and we said, so, what makes you think that you should be chosen for this position? It's the standard question that almost every interview ends with. Why should we hire you? And if you look on the screen, this person said, well, I'm a hard worker, I'm trustworthy, I'm willing to take on new assignments, and that was it, pretty much. The problem we had with that is that, after that interview, this individual's supervisor, not the branch chief, but the supervisor, was one of the interviewers. And we gave this person every opportunity to impress us. But this response did not impress us. Can you take a guess why?
Possibly this person couldn't explain well. He was not a good speaker. Mm-hmm. Or maybe he was not well aware of the requirements of the new job in order to, quote-unquote, sell himself well or herself,
Mm-hmm.
So I think I have been sitting in many interviews as interviewer and as interviewee. So I know that your personality also plays a big role. Mm. Your positivity makes a big role. The fact that you do state that you are willing to go above and beyond the line of duty to get your office to shine, if you don't say those things as like an icing on the cake, then you are, what is the difference between you and the lowest person? All of you are same qualified. All of you are qualified.
Absolutely. You are spot on. The thing is, we had like 8, you're right, 8 people came into that interview. 7 of them pretty much described how they had value that they immediately brought to the position. If we hired them, we would automatically move forward in terms of our capabilities, our process maturity, etc. And this other person said, well, I'm a hard worker. You can trust me. I'm willing to take on new assignments. That's a given. That's a given among everybody. If you say, I'm a hard worker, you don't get to that interview and say, well, I don't work very hard. No. By the time you get to that interview, they had gone through over 100 resumes to get down to those 8 people. So you're already at the top of the group. The main thing that you want to do in an interview, and this is any interview for any position, anywhere, federal, industry, or whatever, you want to demonstrate and prove your value. In other words, you want your hiring manager, like it says down at the very bottom of this slide, convince them that they'd miss out if they didn't hire you. You walk in, you are automatically a positive force. Not you're worth promoting. Because that's how this person approached it. This person, from what we could tell, basically said, I've been in this position long enough, I deserve a raise. Or I deserve a promotion. And this person did not get the position. And is still in that same position this person was in before, because the only thing this person could communicate is, I'm a good worker. Whereas all these others were saying, I've helped this group, I increased the efficiency of this group, I reduced the errors, I upped the quality, etc. In other words, if you hire me, I am already moving my organization forward, and I will do the same for you. It's not that they had particular skills that differentiated them. It's that they were already in action to improve wherever they were. This other person that we interviewed, I mean, I'm serious. We hung up with this person, disconnected, and there were 5 of us on this interview. All 5 of us were senior folks in IT. And this person's supervisor kind of looked at everybody and said, come on. Everything had been laid for this person to be selected if this person would just have been able to hold their own with everybody else and say, I bring value. They would have been selected. Because, all things being equal, usually a hiring manager goes with a known quantity. If I've got somebody who comes from who knows where and somebody who's been working here already for 2 years and they have exactly the same qualifications, I'm going to choose the known quantity, the one that I have been able to observe doing good work. So in that case, this person had every advantage when they were asked this last question, and they failed miserably. They did not demonstrate, they weren't able to describe why it's important for them to even be there. They just said, I'm a hard worker. And that basically means I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Well, when you get higher and higher up in the hiring positions and in the responsibility of those positions, you're expected to work with less and less supervision and be thinking more and more independently and focusing on the betterment of your organization. But none of these responses indicated any of that. So of the other 7, we chose one of them. Well, we didn't, but, we gave a recommendation for like 3 of them, and this incumbent was not selected. So I'm serious when I say the important thing is that this may sound like a one of those, everybody asks it, everybody answers it, what's the big deal? This was a big deal, and this was a make or break for this particular employee. So don't sell yourself short. Like Doug was saying, you were saying, you've got to sort of sell yourself at times. This is the time where you sell yourself. I'll give you an example with me. When I was hired into this position, I was literally interviewed by the CIO himself. And he finished with this particular question: why should we hire you? And I had a listing of all the things that I had done that he could prove that showed I was a positive value already. And then as everything was said and done, and I was just finishing up, the last sentence I had, and I didn't even finish the sentence, I said, I've done this, I've made this, I've achieved this, we've done this as a result of what I've done, I've increased this, I've increased value, I've increased our quality, I've decreased customer complaints, I've increased customer satisfaction, all of those things. And then we got to the end and I said, 3 degrees, 6 certifications, and I just let it go at that. I didn't say anything about it except I am I am a force to be reckoned with. I am working already. Whether or not you hire me, I'm working. Whether you think I'm valuable here or not, I'm valuable wherever I go. And oh, by the way, I can prove that with 3 degrees and 6 certifications. And
My
they hire
selling,
me. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
The selling point when I got into OCIO was when the branch chief and the head of the region ESD or help desk was interviewing me, and they go, why should we select you? And pretty much I told them, hey, if I'm willing to do this for free, what makes you think you guys are going to give me the GS money and I'm going to do the same exact thing? And left it as that. And they ate that up. They literally ate that up to the point that the branch chief went to, at the time, my team lead and goes, do you see what he's doing volunteer-wise? He's good.
Yep.
That was the second interview, and that's how I knew I got it, was, hey, I had a second interview with that same branch chief with the team lead.
Right. Right.
Scotty, may I add my 2 cents?
Sure, certainly.
This is kind of a theory, or it's an imaginary question, but could be very well in real life. Imagine that in your group or my group or whomever, we pick the best top 3, and we would always number them, like whatever, point them, give them the point, 30 points, 20 points, 30, whatever system we have.
Yep.
And then we can also add one little notation. There is an old saying that says, if all 3 of us, we look the same, we have the exact same education and background, our qualification is exactly the same, and everything else is exactly the same. Imagine we are triplets and we are background-wise, we are just exactly the same. Who would win the last one? And the answer is the one who is who has believed in himself or herself, or for the other word is let me just think of the word, is confident. The most confident person. Your confidence will win you jobs, interviews, and so on. So if we are exactly the same, even with my foreign accent, when they see my commitment, not only my excellence, my commitment, and my confidence, exactly the same thing that Chris was saying, that no matter where I go, I am a success, and I am an asset to my office. No matter if I am, whatever, no matter what I do, I am the asset of and I will say that because thus far I have been there, and I can prove it. So the confidence that I carry myself out is very important.
Very good. I agree entirely. During that same round of interviews, there was one individual who was very smart, very, very smart. I know because I worked side by side with him for the last, year or so. I knew his capabilities, but in the interview, they would ask him questions, and he would fumble with an answer. Well, I think that, if it was okay, I'd do this or whatever. And you're right. His technical skills were not visible in the way he answered these questions. His assurance, his own assurance in himself, did not show, and he was not considered. He was a very, very bright individual, but they say in an interview that is the time when you should be banging your own drum. You should be saying, I'm the best for this position, and here's why. And mean it.
And if I may,
yeah.
The presentation is very important. Why do people dress up differently for an interview? It is presentation. Why do we, do meditate or everything to release all of other thoughts? Or the mother is not feeling good, or my sister is this, the spouse is that, the children. Just everything, and just read all of the works, whatever expectations, and all of your cheat sheets, and just go there like a champion. Your presentation. So many times I have seen that how people discriminate people based on, with all due respect, if people are heavy or obese. If people, they sound lazy, maybe they're not. If there is a little word about them that always are snacking at the work, it's silly things. If they're girls, they're always on the phone, which technically we are not allowed.
Right.
You have experience with the federal, and my experience is in the state, which is exactly the same. All of the promotion things are exactly the same. Yeah, I was just saying presentation is very important.
Yeah. Very good.
Scotty, I have a good question for the value of the CS-Sensei group and the people who are watching. The Western stereotype of an IT person is the social anxiety, antisocial, I'm the more technical, know-it-all kind of person. What kind of things are out there to help them advance in the IT realm, besides being very smart and very knowledgeable and technical? I think Farzana provided a very good point about presentation. I know there's a club out there called Toastmasters. I'm not going to plug them in this group because we don't want to provide that kind of stuff. But what would be your guidance on this, on how to present yourself as the person that people want as a IT stereotype, with the fact that this person's an IT stereotype in the Western culture?
Yeah, I've been in the IT field for 31 years, and I've seen many things that help me understand that there really aren't stereotypes, but I understand what you're saying. Some people may have it in their mind that this is what the right IT person looks like. I would say that any interview skills workshop or videos or courses or whatever would be helpful. You can't easily change some things about yourself. But there are some things that you do control. You guys probably, I hope you saw a couple months ago where I had somebody who talked about interviews that he conducted, and there was he was a hiring manager on the East Coast near the DC metro area, and he interviewed a guy from California. And this guy from California literally appeared for his interview in shorts and a t-shirt. And, during the interview, it came out, he said, well, yeah, in California, you can wear whatever you want to, so I never wear ties. Well, this hiring manager was in Washington, D.C., where, ties are almost expected. So that differentiation, this person who basically stood on his own principle that he will never wear a tie, was probably one of the reasons why he was not selected for the position. So you have to make sure that you tick every box you're capable of ticking. And don't leave yourself short on anything because this is the way you think things need to run. No, play the game. Dress up, like Farzana said. dress up, look the part of the professional. It may be a suit that you had to dust off to get into the interview, but do it. You know, if you got to borrow somebody's jacket, do it. So that you come across as being, you know, the best at this and the best at this and the best at this and the best at this. Because again, talking just federal positions, for nearly all of the vacancies that I've seen, there have been historically well over 100 applications submitted. So you've got to differentiate yourself in every area. So, interview skills. Watch LinkedIn. They've got a bunch of them out there on LinkedIn. Anything else? Okay,
well,
really quick. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just have a couple of very elementary questions, but I would let you finish your lecture, and these questions are just basic. They are, as I said, because I don't know anything about these jobs, but I know about the system, and I have a background very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would ask them at the end when you give us 5 minutes.
Okay, so we'll finish this up, and I'll stop the recording, and then we can talk. The last thing I wanted for us to cover was based on the announcement that came overnight that there is another Google Chrome browser update, and it is not being mandatorily pushed yet. It will be, but it's not pushed yet. The problem is there is already an exploit that is out there being used. So I wanted everybody, I'm gonna demonstrate it with my browser. If you click on the 3 dots and then go to settings, I'm in Google Chrome, and then down here on the bottom left it says About Chrome. If you click on that, it will tell you if your browser is up to date. If not, it will automatically start an update right there. Okay, so that's number 1. When you're all done with your update, you have to restart your browser for it to take effect. Pretty much the same thing in Microsoft Edge, and you need to do this even if you don't use the browser. So I go into Edge. Down at the bottom it says Help and Feedback About Microsoft Edge. You click on it and it says here's your version. Now I will tell you, when I opened Edge, I rarely use Edge, but when I opened Edge this morning, the first thing that popped up is it says your Edge has been updated. You know, hooray, your Edge is updated. Well, I went through these steps and went down to this screen, and it said, oh, there's one more update. So don't rely on those great big screens to tell you that your update has occurred. Go down and look for the latest updates.
Again, sorry.
Yep.
Oh, go ahead. Well, no, can you show that again, how to do it in Edge?
In Edge?
Yeah.
Sure. I guess I closed Edge. So Microsoft Edge, you click on the ellipsis, which is the 3 dots. Find Help and Feedback About Microsoft Edge.
Okay.
And that shows the versioning.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Got it. Thank you.
And in addition, everybody knows how to do your Windows 10, right? Click on Start, check for updates, click on Open. Even if it says you're up to date, check. I did one this morning before this call, and it said, yeah, you checked this 2 hours ago. And I said, okay, check again. And it found 2 more updates. In 2 hours, Microsoft had published 2 more updates. So always manually check here. Okay. Now there are other updates, obviously, but those are all considered optional, quality, you know, drivers, etc. these aren't the ones that you need to be concerned about. It's the ones up here that you should do frequently. By the way, that is another reason why you should periodically reboot your computer. If you leave it up and running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you stand the possibility of an update being pushed but not applied. So make sure you routinely restart your computer so that it refreshes all of those updates.
Got it.
Okay? Okay. That's all I had at the moment, guys. I'm going to stop our recording. Anybody else before we stop it?
Mm-mm.
Excellent. Great. Thank you.